And welcome back to America Talks Live. Before we talk about the House Intel panel, let's talk about former FBI Director James Comey for a moment. Congressman Jim Jordan slamming him. He says Americans are tired of the way he and Democrats have been favored with what Jordan calls a double standard.
This is ridiculous. The American people are so fed up with this two standards, one standard for us regular folk and different standard if your name is Clinton, Comey, Lynch, Lerner. That's what American people are fed up. And the fact that 5 of the top people, this is what should concern Mr. Comey. He's been fired. Andrew McCabe has been fired for lying 4 times, 3 times under oath. Jim Baker, former chief counsel, has been demoted and reassigned at the FBI. Peter Strzok, deputy head of counterintelligence, demoted, reassigned. Lisa Page, FBI counsel, demoted, reassigned. These are the top people at the FBI. That's what he should be concerned about and what the American people are rightfully concerned about.
And the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Trey Gowdy, says James Comey's definition of a leak, he says it's wrong.
The other thing I will tell you, Tucker, that I learned tonight is Jim Comey has a definition of the word leak that no one else has. Yeah. What he says is a leak is what the rest of us call a felony. Leaking is disclosing a confidential conversation, which is exactly what he did.
And here's Comey from Wednesday night claiming that he's not a leaker and offering his own definition of what he says a leaker really is.
I asked a friend to communicate the substance of one unclassified memo.
Whether you
Can I finish for a second?
Sure, okay.
One unclassified memo to the media, and I was really important. I was a private citizen. I was not an FBI employee at that time.
But it was an internal document. It was a document you had written while you were FBI director. That is a leak. I mean, if you tell somebody, don't give them the document, but tell them what's in the document, that's still a leak, no?
Well, not to get tangled up in it, I think of a leak as an unauthorized disclosure of classified information.
Really? That's it?
That's how I thought about it as FBI director. We investigated leaks, so unauthorized disclosures.
And that's where we want to bring in our next guest. Mr. Clarence McKee joins us on the set. He's a political commentator, and he got our memo to wear blue today.
He did.
Clarence is also a Newsmax contributor and has held several positions in the Reagan campaigns and administrations. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here, my friend.
Always great to see you, Clarence.
Yeah, and we appreciate you wearing blue.
Blue Boy ice cream.
That's right.
This is, Clarence, Trey Gowdy, I think, nailed it. This is the definition of a felony. But one of the things that's driving me insane is when Comey says, I was a private citizen. To me, as a former law enforcement guy, that makes it worse. That makes it worse. He smuggled memos out of the FBI. Then when he was no longer in a position of authority, he leaked the classified information as a private guy. That alone should be grounds for prosecution.
Nation's #1 dirty cop. Listen, we've all heard the expression, the 3 monkeys, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Well, this guy is the 3 monkeys personified. He hears no evil, sees no evil, or speaks no evil against Hillary and her friends, the Democratic Party, like, I didn't know who paid for that dossier.
That's right.
All his hearing, seeing, and speaking is against the President of the United States. I think
solely and his associates.
No, you bring up a good point there.
Digging a hole for himself.
And I thought, Anderson Cooper did a really nice job there interviewing him. I think he did. I'm going to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I said yesterday, but you have to give credit on that one. He pressed him.
He did press him because he, basically he can say private citizen. Okay, maybe you were a private citizen when you shared the contents of that memo, but when you wrote that memo, you weren't a private citizen.
That's right.
Right.
You were working for the FBI and as its director.
But there's no private citizen provision in federal law in 18 U.S. Code. I think it's, 1001. There's no private citizen provision that says, you got fired from the FBI.
Okay, so
it's no longer a crime.
No, you bring up a good point. Okay, so you worked as a police officer in New York. Right. So if there was something that you covered as a police officer, even if you're no longer a police officer, I'm sure there are certain things that you can no longer discuss.
The statute remains the same.
Right.
If the information is confidential or classified, it doesn't matter who's employing you when you leak it. You're still violating the law.
Why?
Or why, right?
As I said last week, I'm telling you, Comey can talk all he wants to. What's going to happen with the Inspector General of the Department of Justice?
Yeah,
I think he's going to get the same treatment that his boy McCabe got.
A criminal referral.
Criminal referral.
Yeah.
Followed immediately by Lynch. This is going to blow up. The Democrats are going to be all upset. They're going to have to put their feet in their mouth again and cower because this backfired. The House committee today is giving more pressure on Mueller to
and let's talk about that because we were talking about that
Clarence.
right before the commercial break. So I'm glad that you brought that up because that is one of the things we wanted to discuss. This just happened today. The House Intelligence Committee releasing its final report, over 250 pages. A lot of people waiting for this, but there has been a lot of criticism about this committee in the report being GOP-led. That, a lot of people on the left are saying this is just partisan politics. It wasn't thorough. The Democrats weren't involved in this process.
They didn't want to be involved.
And people from the intelligence community.
But you know why I debunked that? Because when the Benghazi committee went nowhere on Hillary, it was the greatest committee in the history of committees, and it exonerated Hillary, and it was still Republican run. So that committee was the greatest committee in the history of committees when the GOP led it. But this committee is the worst committee in the history of committees because it finds no wrongdoing on the part of Trump. So if they find no wrongdoing on the part of Democrats.
Right, but for our audience that are tuning in, it didn't find any collusion. But it did reach a conclusion. There you go.
There you go.
But it did find that there was some interference from Russians. But you bring up a point that...
But that has nothing to do with Trump.
Really we want to get to, though. Jeff Sessions saying, okay, just yesterday saying this Mueller investigation needs to wrap up soon. Does the release of this...
Said that.
He really said that.
Wow.
Sessions said
Does the release of this report, if we're running out of time here, but does the release of this report put more pressure on Mueller's team to wrap this up?
I think so. That's why they sent the Cohen case to the Southern District of New York. They're trying to find something to stretch it out. If they can't find something in terms of collusion, they're hoping that their friends in New York will do something to get him out through his lawyer, which they won't because it was a violation of lawyer-client privilege. So I think this is going to wind down soon.
All right.
The press doesn't want it to, and the Democrats don't, but in terms of the law and the courts, it's going to be over.
I happen to agree.
All right, we're going to talk more about this coming up after the break. And as always, you can weigh in on the conversation. Again, that number to call is 1-877-NEWSMAX. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to America Talks Live. Still here with my co-host Miranda Kahn and our good friend Clarence McKee. We're going to bring Clarence back in now. Thanks for
good to be back.
Sticking here on set with us. Now, before the break, we were talking about the House Intel panel's final report on collusion, which found no evidence of collusion or coordination with anybody nefarious on the part of President Trump or his campaign team.
Yeah, and we were talking also, and I thought the timing of this was kind of interesting. So the president went on Fox News the other day and was talking about the Department of Justice, saying, I haven't done anything now, but I may.
Right.
And then on that same day, Jeff Sessions comments about the Mueller probe, saying it does need to come to an end soon. Yes. Coincidence, or do you think that Sessions is finally
getting the message
that this needs to wrap up, otherwise it's...
I think he's getting the message finally. But you know who can really end this thing? If you notice, the second-ranking Republican was concerned with this number of redactions by the intelligence community. The president can do one thing in one sweep. He can declassify all of those things, get rid of all those redactions, and let the public see everything. There's nothing in there that's really seriously going to hurt someone. Just open it up.
You see no reason for that. So even though the intelligence community is saying we really shouldn't.
Well, I think Clarence is right. They don't want to be embarrassed. There's nothing in there that's going to reveal sources, methods, put any of our operators.
That's what they're saying.
Well, they're saying because they don't want to be embarrassed here because they were all.
Well, is there an independent entity then?
It might embarrass Clapper.
It's going to embarrass Clapper, Brennan.
But they're part of the scheme. They're part of the dirt.
There's no operative out there in the field whose life is going to be put in danger if those redactions are eliminated.
Are you willing to bet on that?
From what I've read in context, yeah, I'd be willing to bet on it.
No, I think that's a huge statement to make. Do you agree? Give us a call. Again, that number is 1-877-NEWSMAX.
As Diamond and Silk say, that's right.
That's right.
My buddies.
All right. Well, there is still a lot more to discuss here on America Talks Live. Clarence, we're going to ask you to stay where you are. When we come back after the break, Dr. Gina is going to rejoin us. Good to have her back. We're going to talk about the new allegations against NBC anchor Tom Brokaw. They just surfaced. We're going to talk about those, plus other troubles, apparently, for the Peacock network. Another anchor is making news again, but probably not in the way he would like to. And that, in addition to Tom Brokaw, we're going to talk about that individual coming up next. Look at Clarence. Clarence is like...
He's chomping at the bit.
I know, he's chomping at the bit. Yeah, and we're also going to be talking about another person at NBC News, a female. We'll be right back.
She was harassing?
while I was standing in the Denver bureau with my back to the door, from behind me, out of nowhere, Tom Brokaw walked up, put his hands on my waist, and tickled me all up and down my waist. It was physically unpleasant and humiliating.
And welcome back to America Talks Live. You just heard from former NBC News employee Linda Vester telling Variety about her experiences with Brokaw, accusing him, as you heard, of sexual misconduct. And now another former NBC News anchor is also back in the news again with Brokaw, and that is Matt Lauer. Now, you may recall NBC fired him last year after several women accused him of sexual misconduct. Now, Lauer told the Washington Post that he acted inappropriately as a husband, father, and principal at NBC News. But he also claims any reports of any coercive, aggressive, or abusive actions on his part are false.
That's where we want to welcome back political commentator and a Newsmax contributor, Clarence McKee. Thanks for sticking around, Clarence.
Good.
We're glad to have you back.
So, Clarence, first off, let's start with Tom Brokaw there. What is your reaction to these allegations and, frankly, the timing of them?
Remember the statement, or do you know the statement, the truth shall set you free? That doesn't apply in sexual harassment allegations that are uncontested, that are contested. Brokaw said, I didn't do it. It's his word against her word. He's going to lose this battle. On the other hand, where Matt Lauer admitted he had done some wrong.
Why is he going to lose this battle, though? Going back to
Just
Tom
because
Brokaw.
of Me Too movement.
So it doesn't matter whether he did it or didn't do it, the fact that there is a mere accusation out there.
Exactly. And we're not talking about, now if it comes out 10, 15, 20, or 60 women like in Cosby come out accusing him, that's another story.
Right.
But one woman against one guy, guy's going to lose reputation and everything. It's kind of what they did to the Admiral in terms of the Veterans Administration. But we'll see what happens. He says I didn't do it. We'll see.
It begs the question, though, did she say anything to superiors? Did she tell him it made her
She told a friend.
uncomfortable? But telling a friend is not the same thing as taking action herself. I think these sorts of things,
20 years ago.
don't you think they should
But it was different, though. And I just want to say, I could see it was a different time. It was a different time.
I don't know. There are people that I work with that are male that if they tickled me, it would not even cross my mind to be offended.
Right. Well, and I think
I'm not saying with anyone, but I'm saying there are people that I work with that. I mean, there's the guy that microphones us every day, for crying out loud. You can't get offended. And if I am offended, then I need to go and tell a superior.
And you bring up a valid point. I think a lot of people have different definitions of what they deem to be sexual harassment.
But if they
and that
felt
is a conversation that we're having now, and that's why it's good that we're talking about it.
She have told a superior if it were something that was offensive
Not
to her?
just a friend.
And honestly, you can hold someone's gaze for too long, and that can feel uncomfortable. So if you hold my gaze too long, I'm going to say to you, hey, stop that. That makes me uncomfortable. Or I'm going to go tell a superior. For that matter, you could hold my gaze too long, and that could make me... I mean, we really have to come to terms with what is true sexual harassment and what isn't, and what constitutes a legitimate complaint here.
Right. Now...
She didn't tell her bosses. But then... you have cases where, like I guess in the case of Lauer, women complained to bosses or at Fox, and nothing ever happened. That's a really worse situation.
And that's a problem.
Exactly.
When someone complains to a superior and nothing happens, that's a different thing.
Then they should go to the public and go to the Variety.
But I also think it is up to the woman to tell the person that they need to stop it too.
Right. Well, and going back to Matt Lauer, and I do think this situation is a little different. I don't want to just kind of group everyone together.
That's true. And that's important. I'm glad you made that distinction.
He hasn't really spoken much, right? So he said he felt like the need to do so now, wanting to make that distinction between, yes, it was wrong, and I think, consent, and that's key. That's key there. But then you have Ann Curry now kind of coming out saying that I had warned people about this, and nothing was done. Now, according to records, they're saying there is no record of her warning. So there is this environment. But there's a good point that she made, though, is that maybe some people didn't say what they thought they could say because it didn't matter, and that certain people were going to be protected no matter what.
The problem is...
you can't get too big for
Lauer admitted he had bad situations and got involved with people. He's just saying it was consensual, but he had misbehaved. That's the point.
But I think the other key is, though, you're a principal. I mean, there is a difference when you're an associate producer, let's just say, or a reporter, and you are Matt Lauer.
Right.
You are in a very
That's
different
important.
position
Use
of power.
Yes.
And whether you realize it or not, if it is consensual, someone may be fearful just because of the position that that person is in.
Shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He can say, well, it was consensual. Well, she thought I could fire her. They all say he determined my career. And that's one thing I guess that happened with Megyn Kelly. She was kind of resisting where a lot of others didn't. So consensual is important in terms of the guy, but the power difference is major.
I think we need to be sure and say alleged, because I don't know if anything was proven.
Vester?
Alleged in this situation with Megyn Kelly. I'm not sure anything was ever proven or that was ever even fully litigated. But I think, don't you think that we need to be very careful to delineate in the workplace now, maybe even just to write it out in concepts where it's very distinct so that people know when they're doing something wrong. Right?
I agree. Because there are a lot of people like, I don't know if I can compliment somebody or do this. What is appropriate?
Someone goes for a working lunch. Can you do that? Can you go to happy hour after work, which some of us like to do together?
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. And then
nice dress today. Oh gosh.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure these are a lot of questions that you have, our audience that is watching right now. And if you'd like to weigh in on the conversation, there is a number to call, 1-877-NEWSMAX. I do want to get to Megyn Kelly in just a moment. But first, I found that statement, and I think it's really key. Here's what Ann Curry said. She said, how are they going to complain about it if they are accusing someone who is overseeing the department that is supposed to protect them? Do you have a system that allows those who feel they have been victimized to air their complaints without fear that they will lose their jobs? That's critical.
Exactly.
It is critical.
People need to feel safe that if they have a complaint. And at the same time, you need to know what is right, what is wrong. I totally agree. All right, let's talk about Megyn Kelly real quick. So the Wall Street Journal reports that Kelly's hour of the Today Show, easy for me to say, is drawing less than 2.5 million viewers, which is about 18% lower than what the hour received last year. But the ratings have gone even lower, apparently, in the past couple of months to less than 2 million. So a lot of people are saying, was it worth it? Did they spend too much? She reportedly had a $69 million deal.
Nice deal, huh?
Nice deal. Hey. Was this a wise move for the network to make?
First of all, I've been in broadcast ownership, and there are two things you have to remember. A lot of times, on-air talent get ahead of their skis and think they're great, and ratings aren't necessarily transferable. She was great on Fox. In fact, if she had stayed at Fox, she'd be queen of the network now. Because she was great then, and with all the things that happened, she'd be really up there. So she goes over to NBC, a different format.
But that sounds like
audience.
Still like it was a wise move on the network's part.
Well, listen.
Steal away the competition. Maybe she's not bringing all those viewers over.
They needed ratings.
Yeah.
They wanted to help this Today Show, and they can spend the money. So they took a gamble. So they lose. She won. But the point is, don't think that because you're good in one atmosphere or one format,
right,
transfer across the street.
Or that you're bigger than the network that you're working on, because sometimes it's the network that does well promoting you.
They can afford the loss.
Clarence, don't go anywhere. Actually, no, I'm sorry. You do have to go somewhere. But we appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. John Cardillo is going to be back with us right after the break. You can leave, I promise.